The courtroom erupted in laughter, a sound that should have been shocking. But no one expected it to come at the expense of a 9-year-old girl. Sitting small in her chair, she stared at the judge with quiet intensity, her father's fate hanging in the balance. Every chuckle, every smirk around her fueled a fire no one could see. What no one realized was that this young girl wasn't just innocent. She possessed a mind sharp enough to outwit the most experienced legal minds. In moments, the room would go from ridicule to stunned silence, and one simple act of brilliance would turn the tables in a way nobody could have imagined. Her name was Amaya, and despite her young age, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that belied her years. Growing up in a tight-knit community, she had watched her father, a devoted and honest man, work tirelessly to provide for their family. He was respected, but in the small, biased town where they lived, respect often came second to skin color. The courthouse was a place Amaya had never imagined visiting. And yet here she was, holding her father's hand as he faced charges that felt unjust before the trial even began. The walls were tall and cold, filled with the murmurs of strangers who whispered judgments without knowing the truth. Every corner seemed to echo the subtle prejudices that had long haunted her family, and Amaya could feel the weight of it pressing down on her small shoulders. She observed the people in the courtroom, the judge, the opposing counsel, even some of the spectators. Their stares were sharp, dismissive, and sometimes openly mocking. Amaya had seen similar expressions at her school, in the supermarket, on the streets. The world often underestimated her, and the world certainly underestimated her father. But she also carried something many overlooked, a mind that noticed patterns, remembered details, and understood the power of words and rules better than most adults around her. In the quiet moments before the trial began, Amaya's eyes scanned the courtroom like a seasoned strategist studying a battlefield. Every clerk, every attorney, every figure of authority became part of the puzzle she was already solving in her head. She knew that this wasn't just about winning a case. It was about standing up to an injustice that had defined her family's life for too long. And though no one else could see it yet, the events about to unfold would prove that even the youngest voices could wield extraordinary power. The trial began, and from the very first moment it became clear that Amaya's father was not going to be treated fairly. The prosecution presented their case with a subtle but undeniable bias, painting him as careless, reckless, even dangerous, despite the flimsy evidence. The jury listened politely, but Amaya could sense the invisible weight of prejudice pressing down like a heavy fog. Each objection her father made was met with impatience. Every attempt to clarify a point was brushed aside. Amaya sat quietly, her small hands folded in her lap, watching the courtroom like a hawk. She noticed contradictions in the prosecution's story, small details they assumed no one would notice. The way the evidence was presented, the words chosen by the attorneys, even the fleeting glances exchanged between certain jurors, all of it painted a picture of a story meant to convict before a fair assessment could even take place. Her father, normally calm and composed, began to show signs of strain. Each misstep by the court chipped away at his dignity, and Amaya could feel his frustration mounting. Yet she also sensed that he had no idea how close he was to a solution hiding right under the courtroom's surface. Amaya's mind raced, connecting facts, remembering the law books she had pored over with her father, and silently preparing a strategy only a child with an extraordinary grasp of legal reasoning could conceive. As the trial progressed, tension mounted. Witnesses were called. Some deliberately misrepresented facts, and some seemed swayed by their own biases. Every moment felt heavier than the last. The gallery murmured among themselves, some openly mocking, others whispering in disbelief at the audacity of the proceedings. Amaya's heart pounded, but her eyes remained sharp, her thoughts precise. She knew the moment to act was coming and she had to be ready. She noticed a pattern in the questioning, a legal loophole the prosecution had overlooked, a procedural rule that could not be ignored. Her pulse quickened, not with fear, but with determination. This was her chance. The courtroom might underestimate her, laugh at her, dismiss her as just a child, but she carried knowledge that could shift the entire balance of power. Every chuckle, every smirk, every sideways glance would soon be turned against those who had underestimated her. The rising tension reached a palpable point. The judge, unaware of what was coming, continued proceedings with casual authority, never imagining that a small girl in the corner could hold the key to justice. The jury remained tense, caught between the apparent narrative of the prosecution and the growing unease that something important was being missed. And in that moment, Amaya made her decision. She would speak, not with arrogance, not with emotion, but with the precision and clarity of someone who had studied the law as if it were second nature. The moment arrived. Amaya stood, small but unwavering, and approached the bench with a confidence that silenced the courtroom. Gasps filled the air. The judge's eyes widened, the prosecution froze mid-sentence, and the gallery leaned forward, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. She didn't stumble or fumble. Every step was deliberate, every movement precise. With calm authority, she began pointing out the inconsistencies in the prosecution's case, details no one else had noticed. Documents were misfiled, statements contradicted prior testimony, and crucial procedural rules had been violated. Each revelation landed like a hammer strike, knocking the courtroom off balance. The smug expressions of the prosecutors began to falter as they realized their narrative was unraveling. Amaya's father watched in awe, unable to speak. He had always known his daughter was intelligent, but even he had never imagined this level of legal acuity. The courtroom, once filled with laughter at a child's expense, was now wrapped with attention, hanging on every word she spoke. Judges, attorneys, and spectators alike were forced to confront a truth they had ignored. They had underestimated the power of knowledge, courage, and clarity, even when it came from someone so young. The judge, now visibly shaken, tried to regain control, but Amaya's points were irrefutable. Each objection she raised was grounded in law, procedural precedent, and logic so sound that resistance crumbled under its weight. The courtroom atmosphere shifted from mockery to stunned silence. Every smirk, every whisper of doubt was replaced by awe. In that transformative moment, Amaya didn't just defend her father. She commanded respect, redefined authority, and exposed the prejudice that had tainted the proceedings. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, and the judge, forced to acknowledge the truth, made the only fair decision. The courtroom that had once laughed now held its breath, realizing that justice had been restored not by experience or age, but by courage, intellect, and an unyielding commitment to the truth. Amaya returned to her seat, small again in stature, but monumental in impact. She had turned ridicule into reverence, injustice into vindication, and in doing so, had shown the world that sometimes the most powerful voices are those we least expect. The trial ended, and the courtroom emptied slowly as if everyone needed a moment to process what had just occurred. Amaya's father embraced her, pride and gratitude shining in his eyes. For once, the weight of prejudice had been lifted, not by anger or force, but by intelligence, courage, and an unshakable sense of justice. Word of the extraordinary courtroom event spread quickly through their small town. People who had once doubted or dismissed the family now spoke in hushed tones of admiration. Teachers, neighbors, even strangers recognized the truth. Age and appearance were no measure of power, and underestimation could have consequences far beyond anyone's expectations. For Amaya, the experience left a lasting mark. She realized that her voice mattered, that knowledge and preparation could overcome even deeply rooted injustice. Her father, once burdened by fear of discrimination, felt a renewed sense of dignity and hope for the future. Together they had confronted bias and shown that courage and wisdom could prevail, no matter the odds. But the impact extended far beyond them. The courtroom itself had been transformed. The judge, who had begun the trial with dismissive confidence, now carried a newfound respect for fairness, equity, and the voices often silenced by prejudice. The prosecutors and spectators, too, were forced to reflect on their assumptions, recognizing the danger of underestimating anyone, particularly a young black girl standing for what was right. In the days and months that followed, Amaya continued to inspire those around her. Her story became a quiet testament to the power of intellect, resilience, and moral courage. It posed an unspoken challenge to everyone who heard it. How often do we underestimate those who appear small, young, or powerless? And how many injustices could be prevented if we simply opened our eyes, our minds, and our hearts? In that courtroom, laughter had turned to silence, mockery to awe, and fear to respect. And in that transformation lay a simple but profound truth. Justice is not defined by age, size, or color, but by the courage to stand for what is right, even when the world doubts you.